Here's something most people never hear from their own doctor. That heaviness, cramping, or fatigue you feel in your legs by the end of the day isn't always about age or just getting older. Often it traces back to a handful of nutrients your body isn't getting enough of and almost nobody thinks to check. Most people connect leg health to exercise, stretching, or the right pair of shoes. Almost nobody connects it to what's on their plate. But a few everyday vitamin gaps are quietly draining circulation, muscle strength, and nerve function in the legs, one missed meal at a time. And because these deficiencies build slowly, most people don't notice until the symptoms have been showing up for months, sometimes years. Tonight, I'm walking you through 3 vitamins that may be the missing piece behind tired, achy, or weak legs, including one most people have never even heard of, and one that's often confused with a completely different problem. Before we dive in, subscribe and hit the bell so you catch videos like this one, and let me know in the comments which of these 3 you think you might be low on. I read every comment. Stick around for the 3rd one. It's the one that surprises even fitness-focused viewers the most, because it has nothing to do with how much they exercise. Why your legs are often the first to show a problem. I'm Dr. Ashwin. After many years in internal medicine, I want to take a few minutes to explain why legs, specifically, are so often the first place nutrient deficiencies show up, because it reframes everything else in this video. Think about it structurally for a moment. Your legs contain the largest muscle groups in your entire body: the quadriceps, hamstrings, calves, and glutes. They also carry the longest nerve pathways, running all the way from your lower spine down to your toes, and they depend heavily on your circulatory system working efficiently, since blood has to travel the farthest distance against gravity to keep those muscles and nerves properly supplied. That combination, large muscle demand, long nerve pathways, and distant circulation, means your legs are essentially an early warning system. When any one of those 3 systems is even slightly under-supported, your legs are usually where you'll feel it first, long before it shows up anywhere else in the body. That can look like cramping at night, a heavy or sluggish feeling by late afternoon, tingling or numbness in the feet, or muscles that fatigue faster than they used to during ordinary daily movement. Leg discomfort doesn't always mean disease, and I want to be clear about that up front. It can reflect simple things like dehydration, prolonged sitting, poor circulation from inactivity, or a diet that's quietly missing a few key nutrients. But when discomfort becomes a regular, recurring pattern rather than an occasional thing, your vitamin intake deserves a much closer look than it usually gets, and that's exactly what we're going to walk through. The 3 vitamins below aren't exotic, expensive, or hard to find. They're sitting in ordinary kitchens across the country right now. Let's go through all 3, one at a time, and I'll explain not just what each one does, but how a shortfall shows up specifically in the legs, and what the research actually says. Vitamin number 1, vitamin D. The first vitamin on this list is also the most commonly deficient across the general population, and its connection to leg strength is genuinely well documented in the medical literature. Most people think of vitamin D purely in terms of bone health, and that's true. It does help regulate calcium absorption for bones. But vitamin D also plays a direct independent role in muscle contraction and strength, particularly in the large muscles of the thighs and calves, which happen to have some of the highest concentrations of vitamin D receptors in the entire muscular system. Here's what that means practically. When vitamin D levels drop, muscle fibers don't contract as efficiently. Studies looking at older adults with low vitamin D have consistently found measurable declines in grip strength, chair rise time, and lower limb muscle performance, 3 metrics researchers commonly use to assess functional leg strength. Low vitamin D has also been linked to a higher risk of falls, largely because weakened leg muscles struggle to react quickly enough to catch a stumble. What surprises people is how common this deficiency actually is, even in places with plenty of sunshine. Modern indoor lifestyles, sitting at a desk all day, commuting in a car, spending evenings indoors, mean a huge percentage of adults simply don't get enough natural sun exposure to synthesize adequate vitamin D regardless of climate. Add sunscreen use, higher skin melanin content, or living at higher latitudes, and the deficiency rates climb even further. Here's the part most people miss. Vitamin D deficiency rarely causes a dramatic, obvious symptom overnight. It works quietly, gradually weakening muscle contraction and coordination over months, not days. Someone might just assume they're getting older or out of shape, when the real driver is a nutrient gap that's been building for a long time. What to do? If you spend most of your day indoors, aim for a combination of moderate, safe sun exposure, roughly 10 to 15 minutes a few times a week, depending on your skin tone and location, along with dietary sources like fatty fish, egg yolks, and fortified milk or cereal. A simple blood test measuring 25-hydroxyvitamin D can confirm whether your levels are actually low and whether supplementation makes sense for your specific case. This isn't something to guess at. The right dose really does depend on your starting level. Vitamin number 2, vitamin B12. The second vitamin plays a role most people never connect to their legs directly, and that role is nerve health. B12 is essential for producing myelin, the protective coating that wraps around your nerve fibers, allowing electrical signals to travel quickly and cleanly from your brain down to your muscles, and back again from your legs and feet up to your brain. When B12 levels drop, myelin production suffers, and the nerves running down your legs, some of the longest in your entire body, are often affected first, simply because signals have farther to travel and less margin for error. That combination can show up in a few characteristic ways: tingling or a pins and needles sensation in the feet, numbness that seems to creep upward over time, or an unsteady, off-balance feeling when walking or standing for long periods, especially in dim lighting when your eyes can't compensate as easily for reduced sensation. In more advanced cases, people describe a kind of walking on cotton sensation where their feet don't feel quite connected to the ground the way they should. Deficiency is especially common in a few specific groups. Older adults whose stomachs often produce less of the acid needed to absorb B12 from food, people on long-term acid-reducing medications, and those following vegetarian or vegan diets, since B12 is found almost exclusively in animal products like meat, eggs, and dairy. It's estimated that a meaningful percentage of older adults have suboptimal B12 levels without ever having been tested for it. For anyone already dealing with balance issues, a family history of neuropathy, or reduced sensation in the feet, a B12 gap is exactly the kind of daily deficiency that can quietly make an existing problem noticeably worse over time, sometimes without anyone connecting the dots back to diet. What to do? Include B12-rich foods regularly. Eggs, dairy, fish, poultry, and red meat are all strong sources. If you follow a plant-based diet, a B12 supplement isn't just a nice-to-have. It's generally considered a necessary addition, since there's essentially no reliable plant source. For older adults or anyone with digestive conditions affecting absorption, ask your doctor about a simple blood test, and in some cases, a sublingual or injectable form may absorb better than a standard oral pill. Vitamin number 3, vitamin K2. The third vitamin catches even health-conscious gym-going viewers off guard. Vitamin K2. Most people have genuinely never heard of it, and its role in the legs is different from anything we've covered so far. Here's the twist that makes K2 stand apart. Vitamin K2 acts almost like a traffic director for calcium in your bloodstream. It activates specific proteins that guide calcium into your bones, where it belongs, and away from your blood vessels, where it doesn't. When K2 levels are low, calcium can begin accumulating in the walls of your arteries instead, including the arteries running down your legs, gradually stiffening those blood vessels and reducing the healthy, flexible blood flow your leg muscles depend on for endurance and recovery. This matters more than people realize because reduced circulation in the legs doesn't just cause a vague, heavy feeling. Over time, it can contribute to cramping during walking, slower recovery after exercise, and cold or achy feet, especially toward the end of the day when circulation is already working against gravity for hours. Research on K2 has found that adequate intake supports arterial flexibility and helps prevent unwanted calcium buildup in soft tissue. Observational studies tracking vascular health have found associations between low K2 status and reduced circulation and arterial stiffness, particularly affecting the lower body, where blood has the farthest distance to travel. This is the vitamin most people are quietly missing without ever realizing it's connected to how their legs feel by the end of a long day. There's also an interesting interaction worth knowing about. K2 and vitamin D actually work as a team. Vitamin D increases calcium absorption from your gut, and K2 makes sure that calcium ends up in the right place, your bones, rather than your arteries. That's part of why some people who supplement heavily with vitamin D alone without adequate K2 don't get the full benefit they're expecting, and in rare cases may see unwanted calcium shifts. What to do? Fermented foods are your best natural source. Natto, a fermented soybean dish popular in Japan, is by far the richest source. But if that's not appealing, aged cheeses, egg yolks, and certain fermented dairy products also contain meaningful amounts. If you already take calcium or vitamin D supplements, it's genuinely worth asking your doctor whether adding K2 makes sense, so that calcium absorption and placement work together rather than working at cross purposes. The bigger picture. None of these three vitamins are guaranteed on their own to instantly fix leg discomfort. The real impact comes from consistency. Steady vitamin D, B12, and K2 intake working together to support muscle strength, nerve conduction, and circulation, each playing its own distinct but complementary role in how your legs feel and perform day after day. The good news is that this is one of the most controllable parts of leg health you'll ever come across. Unlike genetics, unlike age itself, what ends up on your plate is a daily choice, and small consistent changes compound in the right direction just as reliably as they compound in the wrong one when neglected. When to call your doctor. If you've noticed ongoing leg heaviness, recurring nighttime cramps, tingling, or numbness that doesn't resolve with rest, please don't try to self-diagnose from a YouTube video, including this one. A simple blood panel checking vitamin D, B12, and general nutrient status gives your doctor a much clearer picture of whether you're dealing with a straightforward deficiency, a circulation issue, a nerve condition, or something else entirely that needs a different kind of attention. If you are over 50, spend most of your day indoors, follow a mostly plant-based diet, or take long-term medication that affects nutrient absorption, it's genuinely worth asking your doctor to check these specific levels at your next routine visit, rather than waiting for symptoms to worsen or assuming it's simply a normal part of aging. A patient story. Let me tell you about a patient, Maria, 58, an active daily walker who came in concerned about persistent leg heaviness and occasional nighttime cramping despite staying fit and exercising regularly. She assumed it was simply part of getting older, and honestly, that's what most people in her position would assume too. We looked at her full picture together. Her blood work showed noticeably low vitamin D, well below the healthy range, along with borderline B12 levels that hadn't quite crossed into deficiency but were trending in the wrong direction. Once we addressed both, with a moderate, appropriately dosed vitamin D supplement, a bit more thoughtful sun exposure, and a few small dietary swaps to increase her B12 intake, her energy and leg comfort improved noticeably within about 2 months. What we also changed, almost as an afterthought, was her overall vitamin K intake, adding a few servings of fermented foods into her weekly routine. At her follow-up appointment, she reported far less end-of-day heaviness and noticeably steadier, more comfortable legs on her long walks, which she'd been doing for exercise for years without much improvement until we addressed this angle. The deficiency she never thought to check turned out to be the real opportunity that had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. A few common questions. Before we wrap up, let me quickly address a few things people often ask me about this topic. First, can you get too much of these vitamins? Yes, in theory, particularly with vitamin D, which is fat-soluble and can build up in the body if taken in very high doses over long periods without monitoring. This is exactly why testing matters, rather than simply guessing at a high dose because more must be better. Second, do these vitamins interact with medications? Potentially, yes. Vitamin K2 in particular can interact with certain blood-thinning medications, so if you're on any kind of anticoagulant therapy, this is a conversation to have with your doctor before making any changes. Third, how long before you'd notice a difference? Generally, most people report noticeable changes somewhere between 4 and 12 weeks of consistent correction, depending on how significant the original deficiency was and how consistently the new habits are followed. Everything in this video is educational information based on published research and general nutrition guidance, not personalized medical advice. No one should start or stop a supplement or make significant dietary changes without discussing it with their own doctor first, especially if you have an existing medical condition, take blood thinners, or take medications that interact with vitamin or calcium absorption. Your action plan. Vitamin D. Get moderate, safe sun exposure a few times a week, add fatty fish, egg yolks, or fortified foods to your diet, and consider testing your levels through a simple blood panel. Vitamin B12 diets include animal products like eggs, dairy, poultry, and fish regularly, or supplement reliably if you follow a plant-based diet. Vitamin K2, add fermented foods, aged cheeses, or egg yolks to your weekly routine, especially if you already supplement with calcium or vitamin D. Start by identifying which one or two of these three you might be missing based on what we've covered today, and make one small, sustainable change this week rather than trying to overhaul your entire diet all at once. Small, consistent steps are what actually stick. What's next? If one of these three surprised you, tell me in the comments which one it was. I read every single one, and I'll try to reply to as many as I can. If you want more research-backed content like this, hit subscribe, because new videos come out every week covering what the science actually says about healthy aging, nutrition, and everyday wellness that actually holds up to scrutiny. I'm Dr. Ashwin, and I'll see you in the next one.